In this video, I'm going to try and explain truly how to get off-world data. What is off-world data? Off-world data is data that doesn't exist here. It's not copied from anyone. It's extracted from the void, in which all manner of every possible combination of thought exists all at once, the past, the future, all of it. The hyperdimensions which I've been studying for years and years. Inside of that, you can take information that you can't access. You can cheat. You can reach for something that doesn't yet exist here. But what I want to illustrate in this video is it's exceedingly hard to do. It's very, very hard to do. The mind has to be trained to do it. I wanted to do something so badly that I spent my entire life focused on it. I tried to get off-world information for years. It took me 7 years to be able to do it. I got remnants prior to that, obviously, which is like a bone for the dog to chase the bone. But it took my mind about 7 years to do properly. What I oppose is the New Age movement and some of the functions in which they execute, such as the claim to channel information. So willy-nilly, they give that information to people that are subservient to them, and it can severely disrupt and damage their life. It's super dangerous. I'm not talking about that. This is a very personal thing. I'm explaining essentially what I did in regards to my project, but how you can use it as a tool, provided it's not abused. The difference between me and a spiritualist is that I am very neutral and willing to be proven wrong about anything. A spiritualist can tend to be incredibly aggressive if you challenge their belief systems, which is the complete opposite. It's obviously an imbalance. Some of the prerequisites to extracting information from out there, for me, it's technology and science science that hasn't yet come to pass. Some of the prerequisites are a balanced mind. So the mind must be balanced. You must understand logic and emotion, logic and intuition, and to be able to tell the difference between the two. It's a slippery slope. It's a double-edged sword. It's so easy to go too far one way or the other. But the fundamental prerequisite is a balanced mind to fully embrace the emotional body and the logic faculties of the mind. It seems to open a door at that point, but you also need to transcode the data, in which it comes from a universal language which is emotional based, and it must be solidified in logic which is sound to how this dimension works, this dimension, the laws in which govern this dimension, so that you can convert it into common language, technology wise. If you're to dare to try and take data for technology, it must be transcoded correctly, otherwise nothing. You'll be looking in a needle in a haystack, millions of haystack for trillions of years. It must be fully refined, so you have to train your mind. I accidentally discovered how to do it because I was incredibly persistent in trying to do this. And my mind learnt how to, it created a system based off of the alphabet, which represented, which was the conversion between letters to numbers. And those numbers were ratios for things that I was looking to seek the answers for. And they checked out so many times, it blew my mind. Things in maths which you can't make exist, I knew must exist for what I was doing, and yet when I found the missing piece of the puzzle, I found this I kept finding mathematical solutions to these impossible problems. And I was just like, well, it must exist. The math proves it. And that's what I'm saying. The spiritualist or the New Age person may very well lack or have a massive deficit in logic, in which prevents their mind from seeing the truth, in which the side effect of is constantly walking off cliffs into the abyss of treacherous darkness and not even knowing why, and being frustrated and angry because they don't know how it happened. It's the absence or failing of logic which can lead someone to that awful place many times in their life, and sometimes indefinitely. So persistence is to focus the mind, the persistence to acquire something that you cannot find in a book, if it is of that nature, if it's something that's a solid universal law and you need to know it. You have to have a balanced mind, you have to be highly persistent, you have to ask the question 1,000 times a day for maybe a year, and then you might get the answer. That's after you've trained your mind. And once it does have a system where it can convert the emotions, the universal emotional coding system, into logic that your brain understands that is the same system that our physics uses, if it has to be to that stringent, strict level, then it will very well happen. There's one last prerequisite: you must have the antenna, or it must be developed. One goes hand in hand. If you don't have the antenna, you are not naturally magnetized or interested in extracting the data, because the subtle influences which compel you are actually absent. So it's like a thing pushing you. I knew it existed. I believed it, even though it may... I believed it as much as I could, and I kept pushing and demanding, and eventually push came to shove, and I was struggling with maybe one question every year, and then I was able to get the answers to fundamental questions maybe once a month, until I got what I needed. Because the other thing is, it puts you in a higher brain function and you can burn out. It's also addictive. So be careful. If you can get into it, I call it the zone. Your mind, it's like it has to be geared up to do it. It's really weird. To be absolutely still is how you receive the data, but it has to be geared up to transcode it, because you have to develop systems and look at things from every possible angle in existence. Then you have to constantly break it, as in pull the data apart, make sure you have to find the faults in it. You have to keep cleaning it, and then once it is perfectly congruent, you can't break it with the mathematics, then there's a good probability that you've got something. The reason I know it worked for me is because I predicted the values before I extracted them in the form of mathematics. I intuitively predicted the values to a very high level of accuracy before I discovered the mathematical models, which auto-predicted all of them for me, and that blew my mind. That's one example of many, many, many. But so I don't know, there's very few people that seem to do this, very few people that have to do it, or are even inclined to do it. But it's possible, make no mistake. But it is not channeling information in a New Age circles real time, sucking it out. It is not that. And I have no regard for such things. Some people may be able to do that, but it doesn't really come that easy. It has to be cross-referenced with everything, and it takes time, and you must put in the effort. So I guess let it be a prospective thought. If you are inclined to be in the spiritual circles, don't be so absolute. You could be wrong about everything you believe. And if you're open to that possible idea, your life may be realigned so that it works much, much more efficiently.